We are now in part 3 of the Peloponnesian War, and overall, yeah, things are really starting to heat up. Athens last time won two pretty major battles, both on land and sea, but Plataea was lost to them, and I guess we're just gonna be seeing what else happens, because it seems like things are just gonna keep escalating until the very end. So let's get to it, huh?
In the year 428 BCE, the oligarchic city-state of Mytilene in Lesbos revolted against Athens. They did so by cooperating with Sparta and its allies, particularly Boeotia. The Mytileneans were considering this rebellion for a while, but seized upon the opportunity as the Peloponnesian League began its annual invasion of the Athenian countryside. According to Thucydides, Mytilene wished to develop its own sphere of influence by taking over the entire island of Lesbos. Hence they began their preparations by fortifying the city and hiring mercenaries from the Euxenos Pontos. However,
The Black Sea's Greek name, I'm not gonna try to pronounce that, hospitable sea, means hospitable sea. The Greeks only rarely use the name Black Sea.
cities on Lesbos were not so quick to accept Mytilenean overlordship. Some Lesbian cities, such as the Methymnians, instead preferred to stay with Athens. Moreover, pro-democracy elements in Mytilene itself opposed the direction their oligarchs were taking the city in. These factions, combined with the people of Tenedos, sent off messengers to Athens, informing them of the oligarchs' overtures. Athens was too weakened by the plague and other engagements to intervene at that moment. As such, Mytilene had time to build up its fortifications, ensuring its revolt would succeed. When Athens finally got around to dealing with Mytilene, its plan initially was to attack during the Apollo festival outside the city walls. However, the Mytileneans were warned of the Athenian sneak attack and decided to face them from within their fortified walls. When 40 Athenian triremes faced the Mytilenean fleet outside the city, they were defeated. Afterwards, negotiations began, with Mytilene preemptively sending runners to Sparta to try and obtain Lacedaemonian support during the proceedings. Talks soon collapsed, and the Mytilenean army left the city and attacked the Athenian camp. The Athenians were devastated, but not fully crippled, while the Mytileneans preferred to be on the defensive and retreated back into their walls. Meanwhile, Sparta brought the matter to the Peloponnesian League, which formally incorporated the island of Lesbos as an ally within its ranks. Sparta then organized a campaign to attack Attica in Olympia, but her allies were late due to the harvest season. Athens heard of this and intimidated the League with 100 warships used to raid the Peloponnese. Meanwhile, Mytilene tried to raid the other cities of Lesbos, specifically Methymna, but was repelled. By 427 BCE, the Athenians had begun a proper siege of the rebellious city. Mytilene was fully surrounded, subject to starvation, and completely reliant on a Spartan fleet of 40 ships commanded by Alcidas. The fleet was notoriously late in getting there, having not set sail until the summer of 427 BCE. All told, the Mytileneans were in a very difficult situation.
Yeah, I'll say the Mytileneans are. Yeah, I know I'm not pronouncing that probably right, but whatever. The Mytileneans are an interesting group at the moment of their kind of little rise here. I think it's just the geography, I think. Like, the Peloponnesian League is, like, for the most part, like, nearly connected inland. You know, the majority of it seems to be. Yet, and as we know, on land, the Athenians and their allies don't want to challenge the Spartans, but the Mytileneans now switching kind of puts them at a weird geography, fudge guys, I'm so sorry, but it puts them in a weird position because now they're separated from the main Peloponnesian League. And again, on sea, you know, the Athenians have the advantage, so it's like they were almost destined to be surrounded. And look, they're basically in Athenian territory with all these blue flags surrounding them. So this was very gutsy. Though I think now it goes to show, last video we saw that the Athenians were more than willing to let their allies get sacked because they didn't want to challenge Sparta on land. I guess now the ball falls on Spartan court, right? Like, how are they trying to help their allies? I mean, they sent what, 40 ships that he said, so that's already something, but I guess it has to show, can the Spartans / Peloponnesians. By the way, I just want to preference, I'm saying Athens and Sparta, like, oh, you know, the Spartan side, the Athens side. I know not all these guys are technically Athens, you know, not all these guys are Spartan, like, they're their own, you know, city, state / entities with their own, like, you know, fighting forces and whatnot, but I'm just saying it to simplify it, you get me? So when I'm saying, yeah, I feel like I should specify this, because I feel like this might be a problem later. I'm like, oh, you know, the Athenians here, and like, whoa, Edwin, it's not the Athenians, it's the Orasians. It's like, you know, but they still carry the blue banner, because obviously they're on the side of the Athenians. You know, just to simplify it, guys, for me. Point is, yeah, they're in the Athenian sphere right here, and yeah, this is such an interesting, jump to make. It's just because, like, yeah, I guess we'll see if the Spartans can definitely help one of their own, especially being separated, you know?
Time was running short, and help was likely not coming in time. Ultimately, they decided to enter negotiations. While this may have seemed like an easy triumph for Athens, it was in fact a Pyrrhic victory. After battling the annual invasion into Attica, fighting the naval war in the Isthmus, and funding the siege of Mytilene, Athens' finances were deeply strained. With this background, we enter the infamous Mytilenean debate, which occurred in the agora of the city beloved of the poets. The Athenians were both aghast at the strain of the war and furious at the insolence of the Mytileneans, who had brought them such trouble. As such, a motion was put forward to execute all male citizens of Mytilene and sell the women into slavery. A trireme was dispatched to do the deed, but a day later, the Athenians held another debate, the moral pillars of their society speaking out against indiscriminate slaughter. The man who was pushing for the massacre was Cleon, a man whom Thucydides describes as the most ruthless man in Athens. He claimed that Athens, instead of punishing, was wasting time with sophistry, and that expediency was key. As such, punishment of the Mytileneans would be the best deterrence. Do not therefore be traitors to yourselves, but recall as nearly as possible the moment of suffering and the supreme importance which you then attached to their reduction, and now pay them back in their turn, without yielding to present weakness or forgetting the peril that once hung over you. Punish them as they deserve, and teach your other allies by a striking example that the penalty of rebellion is death. Let them once understand this, and you will not have so often to neglect your enemies while you are fighting with your own confederates. Then came Diodotos, a man who was against the punishment. He urged that Athens act in moderation, and that aggression would be counterproductive. Confess, therefore, that this is the wisest course, and without conceding too much either to pity or to indulgence, by neither of which motives do I, any more than Cleon, wish you to be influenced, upon the plain merits of the case before you, be persuaded by me to try calmly those of the Mytileneans whom Pachys sent off as guilty, and to leave the rest undisturbed. This is at once best for the future, and most terrible to your enemies at the present moment, since good policy against an adversary is superior to the blind attacks of brute force. In the end, Athens reversed its decision by a...
Alright, so that's interesting. I think a video or two ago we covered what the Spartans / Thebans did to that one city and just completely massacring it. And obviously, I think of Alexander the Great and what he did to Thebes. Like, these acts aren't really celebrated, you know? Like, in fact, they probably caused some resentment and, like, ooh, you know? I mean, obviously, I think there should be some type of penalty for revolting. I don't think they should just get off scot-free, but I also think there should be a restraint to a punishment, that just massacring a bunch of people ain't gonna get the job done, you know? It's a bit too ruthless in my opinion. So, again, but yeah, I can see I think there are two extremes to it, for sure, and I think it should somewhat be in the middle, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know, you know?
A slim majority vote. A second trireme was dispatched and reached Mytilene in time to stop the extinction of an entire demos. It was a rare moment of mercy in a war known for its brutality that Thucydides had to note as extraordinary. Athens was growing more belligerent as 426 BCE came about, and debates in the Agora were now going on about how to move forward. Eventually, they decided on a massive assault on Boeotia and Aetolia, regions full of Spartan-allied states. Athens had many allies in neighbouring Messenia, who had lobbied for the campaign to occur on their terms. The Athenians initially sent two major contingents. One was led by Demosthenes, who was to sail across the Peloponnese and blockade the Corinthian Gulf. Nicias led the others to attack in Tanagara, Melos and Boeotia. Demosthenes initially managed to amass a large force of his allies from Messenia, Corcyra and Acarnania, as he had promised to lay siege to Lucca.
The Acarnanians had a rivalry with Lecuca, which they hoped would be settled through force.
However, as he wanted to split the force in two and take further reinforcements from Phocis to go to Aetolia first, many of his allies deserted him. Demosthenes continued on and reached Locris, where he established a base to begin attacking Aetolia. However, the Aetolians had received intelligence and amassed forces that could easily defeat the Athenians. Ranged units in the form of javelin throwers were Athens' great weakness during this period, and the Aetolians were particularly skilled in that regard. As Demosthenes approached towns like Aegytium, he found them empty, for the inhabitants formed bands of guerrilla warriors and fled to the mountains. Using the hilly terrain, the defenders attacked the Athenians constantly, with only Athenian allied auxiliaries able to retaliate at all via arrow fire. To compound matters, Demosthenes ended up without a guide, leading to more chaos among his troops. The result was the complete decimation of the Athenian expedition.
Dang. Yeah, this is just an interesting situation, and I think, like I said, it's just such an interesting situation with all these, you know, the Greeks fighting amongst each other. Athens is obviously you're starting to see the cracks, I feel, in them, you know, in terms of some of their allies wanting to jump ship badly. Obviously the financial and manpower strain of supporting all of this, putting down rebellions, wars of defense, and yeah, a lot of their thing. I feel like we're getting a lot of perspective into the troubles of the Athenians, very little into the Spartans at the moment. But yeah, this was a pretty cool little maneuver, that, you know, the rivals are having against the Athenians, essentially going full guerrilla warfare and really using the weaknesses, you know, of the Athenians through javelins to, you know, fight a guerrilla war of defense. I think it's just very, very smart on the Spartan side. Again, I know these aren't the Spartans, I'm just saying, you know, to simplify things, the Spartans / Athenians, because those are the two main things, but at least on the Spartan side. And yeah,
force, with above average losses for Athens and its allies. Demosthenes was forced to retreat to his previous base of Naupactos. He was loath to return to Athens, as his reputation was tarnished. Hence he continued to operate in naval wars, winning victories at Olpe and Idomeni. The two battles occurred back to back, in essence, as they happened in the background of the Aetolian campaign. At first, the Spartans tried to invade the city of Naupactos after the Aetolians requested their help, using 3,000 hoplites. These hoplites besieged the city with the help of the Locrians, who had promised to help the Athenians but had decided against it and joined the other side. Sparta took the outer walls and defeated the Naupactian contingent, but failed to take the city in time. Demosthenes, hearing of the siege, asked for and received 1,000 Acarnanian hoplites and dashed to the city, forcing the Spartan commander Eurylochos to abandon the siege. He now aimed to go to the Amphilochian city of Argos and use that to subdue Acarnania. His local allies, the Ambraciots, promised to help him with reinforcements in the winter, so the Spartans took positions on a hill at Proscium. The Ambraciots joined them as promised, with 3,000 hoplites, and the combined forces met at Olpe. The Acarnanians moved their troops to Argos and the nearby hill of Olpe, and asked Demosthenes for reinforcements, a request he eagerly obliged, arriving with 20 triremes and 200 Messenian hoplites, alongside 60 Athenian archers, and camped opposite a ravine. The Peloponnesians had Eurylochos on the right, then the Mantinean allies, then mixed contingents in the center and left.
Okay, so it seems like we're down for a showdown. This little contingent right here looks to be hidden in the woods. I'm wondering if the Athenian, or like this weird side thing, it looks like they're trying to hide, right? I don't know if I'm right about that, but if I am, assuming that the Spartans don't notice them, then a sneak attack.
Opposite them were the Acarnanians and Amphilochian javelin throwers, with Demosthenes and the Athenians opposite Eurylochos. At first, the Ambraciots broke through their enemies on the opposite side and began to push towards Argos. They also tried to outflank Demosthenes from the left. However, Demosthenes had also hidden 400 hoplites and light troops in bushes for a convenient sneak attack. These hidden troops sprung forth behind.
Okay, that was clever. I'm glad I was right about that. Like, it looks like they're hiding. Yeah, essentially a sneak attack. Alright, that's just smart. This group of the javelins on Demosthenes' left. The point is, it seems like they're being pushed back hard. I feel like they might break any minute now, but assuming that, you know, this sneak attack are able to break this side, easily save. You know what I mean. Overall, great move about the hiding. The sneak attack, that's just a great move.
The Peloponnesian left flank, which instantly broke into chaos alongside the center, besides the displaced Mantineans. The Ambraciots arrived just in time to see the absolute chaos besieging their side of the fight, and tried to retreat to Olpe. Still, the Acarnanians attacked them as well, with heavy casualties. Eurylochos himself was slain in the battle, and the successor, Menedaios, asked to recover the dead and to retreat to safety. Ever the populist, Demosthenes only agreed to the first request, and for the second, allowed only Menedaios, the Mantineans, and some select Peloponnesians to leave. This was possibly so as to make them look bad, which happened because the Ambraciots tried to join the Spartans in retreat and lost 200 more men to the Athenians. Idomeni occurred 2 days later, as Demosthenes found that the Spartan reinforcements in the south were moving towards the south from Ambracia. As such, he sent troops to block their advance, and the two forces camped on the hills of Idomeni, the Athenians on the higher hill and the Ambraciots on the lower hill. Demosthenes also moved there at night with a team of Acarnanians, Amphilochians, Messenians, and Athenians. In a sneaky move that was worthy of Odysseus, he put the Dorian Messenians in first order to confuse the Ambraciots, who spoke the same dialect. At dawn, they attacked the Ambraciots, who predictably were shocked and caught off guard by the Doric.
Love the little trickery Demosthenes seems to be implementing. A lot of trickery on his part, which is funny because for my mythology class I'm taking right now for university, we're actually reading the Odyssey. So, like, I kind of like that little... Talk about perfect timing, right? To watch this series. Yeah, I'm like, obviously what he tried to do in Antolia failed, but He seems to be doing pretty well at the moment, so I'm wondering if Demosthenes is going to be a major player going forward. It seems like so far he's being set up as that, though I don't know. You never know with history. He might just die in like the next minute or something, like, you know. So, but he seems to be making quite an impact on the Athenian side right now.
Speaking ninja attack. A massacre ensued in the camp, with more Ambraciots dying in the retreat through harsh terrain. The defeat was so bad that Thucydides claimed it was one of the biggest casualty rates of any city, as over 1,000 people died. The ending, however, was a surprise one. The Acarnanians, Amphilochians, and Ambraciots ended up signing a mutual peace treaty that they would work together in any invasion so long as neither side was involved. This was most likely due to fear of Athenian influence growing too strong in the region. In 425 BCE, the city of Messina in Sicily revolted against Athens after a successful bout of Spartan diplomacy compelled them to do so. As a counterplay, Demosthenes developed an idea of using Pylos as a springboard base to raid Sparta with the help of the Messenians. He suggested this to negative responses twice, but due to storms, the Athenians fled and ended up on Pylos anyways, and began building fortifications there. During this period, the annual invasion of Attica took place. Still, when the Spartan king Agis heard of Athenian marines landing on his home city's doorstep, he withdrew his armies back to Sparta and sent both troops and ships to Pylos. Athens brought their squadrons from Zakynthos. Brasidas and Thrasimelides, the Spartan commanders, controlled 90 ships, while Athens controlled only 60. Sparta began attacking the fortifications while mooring ships and blocking the island of Sphacteria and its natural harbour. Ever keen in his strategic insight, Demosthenes determined where the Spartans were most likely to attack and took a small contingent with him there. The rest of the hoplites remained in the forts. Sparta began its attack under Thrasimelides, commanding 43 out of the 90 Spartan ships.
It is interesting how Pylos seems to be like surrounded by, it's like right next to Sparta in terms of like the Peloponnesian territory, and seems to be completely like isolated, you know what I mean? So yeah, this was just interesting. And now it's like, okay, the Spartans definitely have the numerical superiority of ships, but I feel like the Athenians might have the better quality, you know what I mean? So I don't know, but probably if the Spartans don't win this, it could essentially have a powerful enemy right at their doorstep, right? So it's kind of like it's almost like the Spartans have to win this fight. But Demosthenes has shown himself to be quite cunning and capable, so again, I don't know how this will go. Like, you know what I mean? But I guess we'll find out.
But the harbour was too small for them all to attack at once. Smaller boat squadrons made repeated sorties into the bay, but were repeatedly pushed back by the Athenians. Attacks on the fortifications also failed, and after 2 days of fruitless assaults, the Spartans abandoned active attacks and dug in for a siege. However, before they could fully entrench themselves, the Athenian fleet arrived and clashed with the Spartan fleet in an engagement which saw heavy damage inflicted on the Spartan navy. The Spartans moved their fleet into the bay between Sphacteria and Pylos, where the fortifications lay.
Now they're surrounded though. Like, assuming that the Athenians right here, like they're basically stuck in this little area with the Spartan fleet.
Demosthenes was now trapped between the Spartan version of the mythical clashing rocks, but like the Argonauts, they managed to push off the Spartans until the last moment when the Athenian fleet arrived. 420 Spartan hoplites under Epitades were now trapped on Sphacteria. This was an unprecedented situation, so the Spartans sent some officials to inspect the goings-on. Since supplies could no longer be sent to the island, the officials decided to open ceasefire talks with their foe. Sparta's unique constitution, based on the small number of homii as the citizenry and the military force, meant that every loss in manpower could be disastrous in the long run. Hence their...
Yeah, I've heard about this in regards to Sparta. They never had manpower, at least... You know, I don't think they could ever field a lot of soldiers. I think, mainly due to, yeah, obviously, a state of constant war, plus basically almost every male being in the military obviously drains the manpower pool. Also, you have to keep in mind, right, that the majority of their population is just slaves. So, like, I don't think Sparta ever had the manpower that other, you know, civilizations had. And so, like, yeah, could they produce some great warriors? Sure, but obviously they lacked the manpower advantage. They couldn't just field, you know, 100,000 Spartans, obviously. I think, like, what, maybe... Wait. Yeah, according to, like, Google searches, it's kind of like, you know, anywhere from, like... I, like, Googled Sparta at the height of its, like, largest army, probably, like, it says, like, 5,000, like, around there. Maybe I'm just going with the idea that the point is, like, not a lot of, you know, not a lot of, soldiers, in a sense. They didn't have the manpower advantage. And yeah, you know, I guess if they suffered a really catastrophic defeat, it would essentially break them, which is kind of what happened when they fought the Thebans, right? Like, the Spartans essentially just never recovered after they lost to Thebes. So, again, they could produce some very quality soldiers, but they couldn't produce a lot. And yeah, it kind of goes to show you, huh? Like, they have to be very careful, which is just interesting.
Eagerness to negotiate. Athens' demands that all the land they had lost so far in the war were too maximalist to be accepted. The fighting resumed, with Athens besieging Sphacteria and Sparta throughout Pylos. Attempts by Sparta to send supplies to Sphacteria were thwarted, but the siege dragged on for Athens as well. The infamous Cleon, ever the populist, had promoted the rejection of previous compromises with Sparta, and was now backed into a corner. He had been trying to blame Athens' present lack of success on Nicias, the current commander of the Athenian forces. Still, the citizenry of Athens were not having it, demanding to know why, if Nicias' performance was so unsatisfactory, did Cleon not take over the operation? Embarrassed, Cleon's hand was forced, and he amassed some extra troops and proclaimed victory in 20 days would be his.
Cleon, that's quite a lofty declaration. Why did you limit yourself to 20 days? Alright, I'll get it. Oh boy, but I guess this is the ultimate, right? Put your money where your mouth is kind of situation. Alright, Cleon, let's see what you've got. Why do I have... He might surprise me. He might actually be able to do it, and I'd be amazed. But I have a feeling that he might not. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But like, this doesn't seem the most favorable of circumstances he's putting himself in.
When Cleon arrived on the scene, the Spartans had accidentally set the forests of the islet ablaze, which revealed many landing points and removed their camouflage. Cleon and Demosthenes sent out envoys again, but the Spartans rejected any surrender. Split across 3 camps, with Epitades in the center, one on the edge in a fort, and one facing Pylos, the Spartans eventually faced an Athenian attack of 800 hoplites in the middle of the night. The first Spartan post was defeated, and 800 archers and 800 peltasts followed in the landing.
Holy crap.
Alongside the sea...
snap, this might actually just go well. There are like 3 different like surroundings happening. There's the... I feel this is such a weird... The geography lends itself to such a weird situation. Especially with the fleets and whatnot, but... let's find out. Like, I actually don't know where this is going. It's like... I don't know, I'm just fascinated by this, you know?
Demon and the allied contingents, they surrounded the central Spartan position. Hence, the main Spartan contingent was surrounded and vulnerable to attack from both flanks. The Athenians sent bowmen, peltasts, and stone throwers, which rained hell upon the Spartans. The latter retreated to the island fort, which served as a last resort position. They withstood the Athenian onslaught there, as the Delian League could not break into the fort. After a while, the Messenian commander took some light troops and archers and marched across the island's rocky coast. He surrounded the fort from the high ground and began pelting its defenders with missiles from on high. During the commotion, Epitades was killed, and Cleon and Demosthenes ceased the fighting and once more called for negotiations via heralds. Spartans are infamous for not wanting to surrender, but despite this, the heralds' arrival was met with lowered shields, a signal of fatigue and preference for surrender.
Wow.
Ultimately, all the Spartan hoplites laid down their arms. The Athenians were shocked, but also gleeful.
Even they're like, wait, what? Even I'm like, wait, what? Like, oh my goodness, I'm like having the exact same almost feeling as them. That's so cool. Holy crap, the Athenians are like, I've been amazed by them this series. They've been so aggressive. Like, and they've been like obviously the aggressors, I feel like, this series, and they also have just been winning so many battles. It's like I'm amazed by how much the Athenians are like achieving in terms of victory and how aggressive they are. Like, this is a side of Athens I never thought existed or that I thought I'd see. So man, the Spartans are just like on the back foot, I feel like, this war. But I know obviously they win at the end, so it's at some point there's going to be a major role reversal, but at the moment the Athenians kind of just have me amazed. And it goes to show you the power of like naval superiority, right? Like, you can do a lot with a great navy. And I feel like they're really using that advantage to its fullest potential at the moment, you know?
Of the 440 hoplites who had been trapped on the island, 292 survivors were captured and taken to Athens. Of these, 120 were homii, or full Spartan citizens, with the rest most likely being metics or allies. As news of the surrender spread throughout the Greek world, shock and awe followed it. Spartans had a tradition of never surrendering, regardless of the odds against them, so that a contingent of Spartan hoplites had given themselves up before.
Oh, yeah, that's like a huge psychological blow, right? Like, it kind of shatters that whole thing. I guess, you know, I'm assuming it's well known Spartans don't give up, so I feel like this just set out a huge, like, shockwave, right? And probably helped damage the image and prestige of the Spartans. So yeah, a complete psychological victory for the Athenians, like, and a huge morale blow, you know? So, wow.
An Athenian enemy was beyond the comprehension of many Greeks. The Spartan state was perhaps the most shocked of all, as this was an unprecedented diplomatic situation for them. Much like famous prisoner exchanges between combating nations today, this matter dragged on for years, and clauses for releasing all Spartan prisoners from Athenian or Delian captivity were essential to the Peace of Nicaeus 4 years later. The past 4 years of war had been chaotic for Athens and Sparta. As the annual invasions of Attica continued, and Athens recovered from the plague, it had an unprecedented revolt on its hands with Mytilene. They succeeded in winning, but at great cost and stress to their allies. Chaos also ensued on the front in Aetolia, and though Athens scored important victories later, it was still an incredible loss of manpower. Yet somehow, Athens bounced back, and not only scored...
Again, at the beginning you were seeing cracks in the Athenian armor, as I mentioned, and yet, again, they bounced back, which is, I think, just amazing. Like, the Athenians are really impressing me most in this series, I feel, and Yet the Spartans are like, man, Sparta, like, you're kind of on the back foot. You gotta step up your game at the moment.
Victories at sea, but managed to humiliate Sparta in Pylos and Sphacteria. Athens now had the upper hand in the conflict, at least for now, while Sparta had faltered. The Athenians had overstretched, so it was also a matter of time before they started losing momentum. The Archidamian War is approaching its climactic ending, but many epic battles must occur before it is decided. And even when peace is initially reached, there will be too much hubris from victories and too much blood spilled for it to fully stop, and war would return to Greek homes. Hellas has seen much war, and more war will come to its shores, giving the Hellenes a chance for more glory and mourning.
And I think that's where we're gonna end the video now. I will see you guys tomorrow when we go to, part 4? So, yeah, bye everyone.